Hi, now that we officially know the bidders for the 2026 FIFA World Cup after the deadline of August the 11th of submitting the file, we have to get back into important aspects that has to be taken care of within this pattern. As you know, right now the World Cup will expand from 32 teams after the finals of Qatar in 2022 to 48 teams in the edition of 2026 for the very first time. There are several aspects that are always important when we speak about the FIFA World Cup: logistics, hospitality in terms of accommodation, hotels, security. That's a very important thing as well. What I want to get back here is the very and utmost bottom line when we speak about the sports event that is the FIFA World Cup, which is related to the stadium capacity, which is very important. I think it overtops everything, not just the other strength that you have, but also the history that is related to the fact that you have organized each tournament in the past, because this is a very huge test to host 48 teams to compete in the greatest soccer event in the planet. But also on the fact that the stadium capacity is very, very important over everything else, at the point that we cannot bring the polarization of the World Cup being hosted by each confederation. It's who is ready first to host 48 teams. So historically, if we get back to the expansion of 32 teams that has been put after the Soccer World Cup in the United States in 1994, the first edition with 32 teams was France 1998. At the time, France has used 10 stadiums in order to host the tournament. That was already seen at the time gigantic with 32 teams. Then 44 years later, South Korea and Japan used 10 stadiums each, which made it the biggest World Cup in terms of number of stadiums, which was 20 stadiums. And even when Germany got the hosting rights of 2006, at the time the hosting committee of Germany itself that used 12 stadiums in 2006 says, we will do a great World Cup. Germany is a superpower in Europe. But they acknowledge the fact that getting to that level that Japan and South Korea have reached with 20 stadiums, 10 each, is something that is quite unsurpassed during the 2000s decades. South Africa used 10 stadiums and Brazil used 12 stadiums for its World Cups for 32 teams. Now we have to speak about a different challenge. 48 teams is a bigger tournament. And I'm always standing on my position that I am against this idea of having groups of 3. I am pro having 12 groups of 4, with the top 2 of each group advancing to the last 32 round, plus the 8 best third finishers as well joining them. And that way makes it even for every country during the last match day of the groups. But again, this is not the topic of the video. The topic is about the stadium capacity of the committees that are bidding for the 2026 World Cup. If we look at the first file, the file of Morocco, right now the existing stadiums for Morocco are 6 that could correspond to the specifications to organize such a tournament. And these stadiums are Mohammed V Stadium in Casablanca, which is 67,000 spectators. The Stadium Moulay Abdallah in Rabat, which is 52,000 stadiums. The Stadium of Marrakesh, 45,200. The Stadium of Agadir, Adrar, 45,400, and there is the Grand Stade de Tanger, 45,000 in Tangier, and the Stade de Fès Stadium, 45,000. These are 6 stadiums that are existing for this organizing bid for Morocco. Morocco is a great leading economy in the African continent. It has a huge potential, but it's very realistic to know against which superpower it's going against in this bidding context. If I get back to the North American stadia capacity, just by starting with Canada, and you know that if we stay with this 80 matches format, which I said I'm against, I'm for the 104 games format. Canada and Mexico would host 10 games each, while the United States will host the major portion of the tournament, which is 60 games. For that, we can get from Canada five great stadiums. To mention Montreal, Quebec, Stade Olympique, 61,000. In Edmonton, Alberta, there is the Commonwealth Stadium, 56,300. The British Columbia Place Stadium in Vancouver, 55,100. And then the Rogers Centre in Toronto, that have 53,500 in Ontario. And finally, Calgary with the McMahon Stadium, they have 35,600 in Alberta. So these are 5 stadiums that are quite ready for Canada. Again, if Morocco was going versus Canada, we could say that Morocco would have, just versus Canada by itself, we could compare both capacities right now of the soccer stadiums of Morocco versus the ones of Canada. Morocco will definitely have a potential advantage with 6 stadiums with 45,000 plus, and Canada having 4 stadiums with the 50,000 plus. The one of Calgary is 35,600, but this is not the case. In that case, if Canada is in the 80 tournaments, 80 games tournament, it will host 10 games. If there is a potential 104 games tournament, Canada would get about, I would say, 20 to 24 games, which is the same case of Mexico. But in the situation of Mexico, there are far more stadiums that are already existing and that have the capacity. Just to mention the Azteca Stadium in Mexico City, in the Distrito Federal, which is 87,000. Even in Mexico City itself, there is the Olympico Stadium that is 49,000 spectators. Of course, I will go into this short list just about one stadium per city instead of 2, and when I come to the United States, 1 stadium per state or per area. That way there is diversification of geography, because if you look at the map of the North American bit, there are stadiums everywhere in the map, like what I have presented regarding Canada, and now for the case of Mexico as well. Mexico City, like I say, if you have to choose one stadium, there is the Azteca Stadium, 87,000. Monterrey, the same thing. I mean, you have 2 stadiums over there too. In Nuevo Leon, there is the Estadio Rayados, which is 52,300. There is also close to Monterrey, in the suburb of Monterrey, at San Nicolas de los Garza, there is the Estadio Universitario, which is 41,000. But again, if I have to stick with another stadium after the Azteca here, it will be the Estadio Rayados of Monterrey. Guadalajara. In Guadalajara, you have, and the suburbs of Guadalajara in the state of Jalisco, you have in Zapopan, close to Guadalajara, the Estadio Chivas, which is 45,300. There's also the Mythic Stadium of Jalisco, 54,000 spectators. If I have to stick with one of the two, I could say that Jalisco is a great stadium, but the Chivas Stadium, Estadio Chivas in Zapopan, is more compact. So here is another 3rd stadium that you could put for the short list of the 10 to 24 games that will be hosted by Mexico. We don't know 9 years from now what would happen. There is also, if you look at the map in the state of Puebla, there is in Puebla itself, Estadio Cuauhtémoc, which is 46,400 spectators. And then the famous Estadio Corregidoria of Querétaro, that has been built for the FIFA World Cup 1986, that is 38,000. So here are 5 stadiums that are competing just by themselves. Again, if I take Mexico versus Morocco, there are strong chances to have a very tough bidder to be accepted for the result. Just if I take Mexico by itself with Morocco. Again, Mexico have hosted the World Cup twice in 1970 and 1986. This would make it the third time, which will be the record. The other countries that have hosted twice is Italy, Brazil, Germany, and France, and Mexico right now with 2 already in its past. But again, and the United States will be the second time if it hosts in 2026. Mexico will be the third. For Canada, it will be the first. For Morocco, it will be the first. But again, I don't come back to the historical circumstances. I'm just speaking in this video in regards of the main and key bottom line of hosting the FIFA World Cup, which are the stadiums. So we have identified already 10 stadiums in the North American bid so far that would qualify for the hosting rights. Knowing that, like I said, I didn't choose a second stadium in the same city. In the case of Mexico, which could have made it 9, but I stick with it's 8, but I stick with 5 for Canada, 5 in Mexico, like that, given the amount of games that they will host in the tournament. Now, if we speak about the United States, which will host the majority of the games of the World Cup, 60 games if it is an 80 games tournament, or maybe over 70 to 75 games. If it comes to 104 tournaments, it depends of the repartition by then. But here is the thing, I mean, you have here several stadiums to start with the MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, which is a mythic stadium for the sports in the United States. It represents the area of New York and New Jersey, and the stadium of East Rutherford is quite fit to not only host the FIFA World Cup but also to host the FIFA World Cup final, because the last time it was in California in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and it will be great for New York to have such an event, a FIFA World Cup final, to be hosted in its area in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Knowing that the LA will host the final of the Olympic football tournament in 2028, and it has already hosted that in 1984, plus the final of the FIFA World Cup 1994. Internal competition between states and mega cities over here. There's the AT&T Stadium in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, precisely in Arlington, that is a fit 105,000 spectators, and the Memorial Coliseum in Los Angeles as well in California, 93,000 spectators. That could be both great venues for advanced games in the tournaments, for example the semifinals. As you know, the United States will host all the games of the quarterfinals, the semifinals and the final, plus the third game final as well. So the 8 most important games of the tournament, the final phase, will be hosted in the United States. We stay with that format of 80 games, and even with the format of 104, Mexico and Canada will host some groups in their lands, in their stadiums, and they will have perhaps the last 32 games, 2 per country, and the last 16 games, 1 per country. Again, we'll see how it goes. But starting from the quarterfinals, in the bid, the United States will be the host for the quarterfinal games, the semi-final, and the final and the third place. It's a little bit like the Pan-European UEFA European Championship 2020, where there are 13 cities, but London and England will be the host of the main final games, which are the 2 semi-finals and the final in the 2020 Pan-European UEFA European Championship, which will be the first time also to expand this tournament to such a number of countries. It will be 13 in Europe, and the last time with 2 countries was Switzerland and Austria 2008, and before that the Netherlands and Belgium in 2000. And even on the World Cup, like I said, South Korea and Japan were 2 together to host, but it's the very first time that we will have 3 countries trying to host in the North American continent, emulating the event that will happen in the Pan-European 6 years before that. To get back, like I said, there are 3 stadiums already that I have mentioned: MetLife Stadium, AT&T Stadium, as well as the Memorial Coliseum. Even like I said earlier, in Texas, you could also have the case of the Cotton Bowl in Dallas that competes with the AT&T Stadium as a local level. Who's gonna get onto the short list? Of course, the AT&T, I think, to my opinion, is great. The Cotton Bowl has already been in the World Cup in 1994, the first one that was hosted by the United States, such as the Rose Bowl, competing with the Memorial Coliseum that hosted the 1984 Los Angeles Summer Olympics. The Rose Bowl have hosted the 1994 FIFA World Cup final, Brazil and Italy, and other very important games like the semi-final, Italy and Bulgaria, or the quarterfinal, Bulgaria and Germany. So the 4th stadium that could be added to this list, to the short list, is the FedEx Field in the DC metro area, exactly in Landover, Maryland. This will be a great place also for an advanced game in the tournament in the 82,000 venue. Great opportunity for DC, Maryland, and Virginia, the other tri-state, to build up for a great organization for this FIFA World Cup. There is also the RFK Stadium in DC that it has been hosted, used before for the 1994 World Cup, and the FedEx Field in Landover seems to be great to be potentially on the short list. Then there is the Lambeau Field in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Definitely a great place. 81,440 spectators could fit on it. There is the Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City in Missouri, 76,400. It will be a great opportunity for Missouri to get back as an international venue for the United States. 122 years after St. Louis have hosted the first Summer Olympic in the United States and the 3rd overall in 1904. So far 6 stadiums with this capacity. The 7th one to be added here will be the Sport Authority Field at Mile High in Denver, Colorado, which fits 6,120 spectators. And after that, there is the Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, in North Carolina, 75,400. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, 75,000. Great place. So by now we have already seen 9 stadiums so far that are up to 75,000 into the United States. And overall, we have 19 stadiums between USA, Mexico, and Canada in this virtual shortlist, which almost makes the bid overpassing the one of the 20 stadiums used by South Korea and Japan, which will definitely happen because 32 teams tournament and 48 teams tournament. This is another dimension of the sport, another dimension of soccer, another dimension of organization, and another dimension for the economy. So to continue, there is the Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay in Florida, which is 73,300 spectators. The University of Phoenix Stadium, located in Glendale, Arizona, 73,000. There is the Las Vegas Stadium in Nevada, which is 72,000. The Mercedes-Benz Superdome, in New Orleans, in Louisiana, 72,000. Then you also can add the Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama, 71,500, and the Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, which is almost 70,000, about 69,500. So these are at least 25 stadiums in North America that are already fit and built to host the 2026 FIFA World Cup. So I'll let you judge, use your best judgment, but you have seen my analysis of the stadium capacity of both bids, North America and Morocco. And of course, we will follow up with great interest the next steps of this bids and the follow-up steps that will be made by the FIFA. I'm very interested to see how it's going to evolve and to get back in regards of the details of the tournament in terms of switching from the groups of three that will spoil the whole spectacle of this historical and mythical competition to a group of four, to give better chances to smaller soccer federation to blossom at the international level for an event that gets organized only once every 4 years. Thank you very much for listening.